So your character has fears, real fears, fears that make sense for the situation. And yet your story feels emotionally thin. Why? You've made your flawed characters, you've done everything right. So why doesn't this feel like it's working? So there is a fix to this problem, and the fears you've already written and figured out aren't wrong. They just need a root. At Moonlight's Muse actually commented on a previous video saying that their characters' fears felt very situational, and I thought that this was a topic worth digging into. Your story has plot level stakes. There are situational fears that will go along with the plot level. That's just how your story is going to plan out. Situational fears in stories are akin to armor. Character fears are wounds that the armor is hiding. Your reader is going to see the armor, but your readers are going to feel the wound. The plot fears are going to answer the question, what could go wrong in this scene, and what are the consequences to the character if things go wrong? But your character level fears are going to answer the question, what does this person believe is fundamentally true about themselves and about the world? And what terrifies them about this belief? So here's the thing about the root cause. It's not that your character's fears are weak or they're not good enough fears. It's that they're not connected to anything happening beneath the plot. People love stories primarily, at least in my experience, is because they love the characters. Stories typically follow a character's journey of transformation and about growth. And if your character's gonna grow, they need something to grow from. So, this root fear existed in your character far before the first plot point ever happened, before their village was attacked, before the dragon showed up, before a wizard came and knocked on their door. This root fear existed before all of that. So we're going to break this down into three different sections. First is going to be your surface level fears. These fears are what your character is afraid of in this current situation. Are they afraid of failing their mission? Are they afraid of public humiliation? Are they afraid of dying to the dragon? These fears are real, they're valid. Don't cut them. This is important in your storytelling. Just because I'm talking about going deeper with your character's fears doesn't mean you need to cut all the work you've already done. These are good starting points. Your story will have plot points. There will be external plot progression. That's just how stories work. But to make those plot points even stronger, going to go a level deeper, and that's the root fear. So the root fear is what the surface fear is actually protecting. Let's go back to the armor example. We see a character wearing armor. That armor is meant to protect them, but in this case, your character has a wound that won't heal. That armor is to protect that wound from getting worse. A guard's fear of failing at their mission is a valid fear. They need that motivation. But why does he fear failing the mission? Well, if he fails the mission, maybe his son is put in danger. Having a motivation underneath each moment is going to strengthen your story. At Moonlight's Muses mentioned a character fearing failing this trial that they have to do in place of their dad. That starts getting into an underlying root of the surface fear is protecting their dad. It's like Mulan. She might be afraid of the war, but she's more afraid of her dad being drafted. So she's willing to, possibly be executed for pretending to be a man in the military to protect her father, because the true fear is her family's protection more than any of the surface level, oh no, the Huns are gonna get us, or I'm not doing well in training, or my secret might be found out. They're all tied to protecting her family. So the belief creates the fear. Every root fear is going to be tied to a belief that your character holds about the world. What do I mean by this? Well, look at an actual plant that has roots. Your roots will only grow when they have something to grow into. That soil is your character's belief. It's the viewpoint they have in the world. It's the lie that they must conquer in order to fulfill who they need to be by the end of the story. What is this worldview that your character has? So find the belief that your character holds, and then your fears are going to become more dimensional for them. Let's use a character example to dig into this concept a little bit more. Sam, wonderful Samwise Gamgee. Why did Sam go on this adventure with Frodo? Something scared him immensely, and that was Gandalf threatened to turn him into a toad and send him on this adventure with Frodo as punishment for eavesdropping, because if Sam said a word about this to anybody, Gandalf would turn him into a toad. Valid fear. I don't want to be turned into an amphibian. I wouldn't want that either. Sam didn't want to be turned to something unusual. That's completely valid. But what is the root underneath this fear? I think that the root of this fear is Sam was afraid to lose Frodo. So let's dig into their history a little bit to unfold this. Sam is a second generation gardener to the Baggins family. So there's this reputation of loyalty, multi generational familial loyalty between these two families. And Sam himself also exudes loyalty. So what started out as this master-servant relationship between Frodo and Sam turned into this bond that's stronger than brothers. Why? It's because Sam was afraid to lose Frodo. Look at every situation that Sam overcomes throughout The Lord of the Rings. All of the orcs that they face, him trying to swim after Frodo even though he can't swim, them climbing Mount Doom, him fighting Shelob, all of these things, him being courageous and speaking against Gollum, all of these things are because Sam is afraid of losing Frodo. All the things I mentioned, these are surface level fears. These are fears that must exist in your story. These are all the situations your characters will need to overcome, but the character level fear is part of the motivation tying your character to the story itself. If you want your character to feel real, you want their fears to feel real, tie them to a motivation. Sam is motivated to stay with Frodo and to help and to serve him. That's always been there. And that only blossoms and grows into this beautiful, strong friendship throughout the story. So, the first time that I've worked with an alpha reader, it stressed me out so much. I was worried the story wasn't good, that it didn't make sense, that the characters didn't work, that I was a bad writer. All of those fears are valid. They're valid fears. But the real fear, the root fear that I was feeling was of being seen. See, this book, this series, I poured a lot of myself into. I wrote out a lot of personal things, a lot of struggles that few people currently know about. I was afraid of being judged. So that root fear was of me actually being seen. But guess what? Those elements that I was afraid of other people reading, those are the elements that made the story strong. Those are the elements my alpha reader liked the most. Those are the elements that made the story work. So how do we fix this? Well, the fact that you've already given your characters these situational fears, that you've put them in situations where they aren't perfectly adept in order to handle it, is great. You've already put yourself ahead of the curve of many new writers. That's wonderful. You haven't failed. You just haven't quite gone deep enough yet. So for each character's surface fear, ask yourself, what does failing, insert situation here, make your character believe about themselves? Go ahead and jot that down in a single sentence. What does that belief cement in your character's mind? Then ask yourself, this belief, has this character held this belief before the story began? If the answer is yes, congratulations, you found your root fear. If the answer is no, keep digging deeper until you find that root. Find that wound. From your character's wound is going to sprout so much for your story. It's going to create tension, it's going to create conflict, it's going to create so many problems, and it's going to create something for them to overcome. So figuring out this root fear in your character's wound is important. So the final step is find a moment early in your story where you can trigger this root fear by something completely unrelated to the plot. Doing this is going to show your readers your character's wound before the battle begins, before the bad guy shows up, before the story gets going. And this is also going to endear your audience to your character because they'll already see something that your character needs to overcome. And then once that first conflict comes along, they're already going to be rooting for your characters. So this wound is a critical piece to understanding your character because it's the wound your character tries to avoid. It's the wound they are trying to protect. And you know how you treat a wound? Well, that's probably going to be in another video. So take one of your characters, I would recommend focusing on your protagonist first, and write down their surface fear in one sentence, some kind of conflict that you put them in. Now write, if this fear comes true, my character will believe blank about themselves. Then write, they have believed blank since when. This third answer is going to be the wound. Build from there. Great, you have conflict to hurt your character, fears for them to overcome, you figured out the root fear underlying all of it, you even have a taste of their backstory of where this fear originated from. But what does that look like in practice? How does this unfold in a character arc? If only there was a video discussing this. Perhaps even two.